I stood there in my best Sunday dress, the one with the tiny roses on it, watching my son laugh with his fancy lawyer friends. My hands shook as I held the birthday cake I'd spent all morning decorating. 67 years old, and I'd never felt smaller than when Darius turned to his colleagues and said those words that cut deeper than any knife ever could. "Oh, that's just Rosa, the maid. She made the cake." Just Rosa, the maid. Not his mother who stayed up nights when he had fever. Not the woman who worked 3 jobs to put him through law school. Just the help. I set the cake down real gentle on the marble counter, my grandmother's recipe that his friends had been raving about all evening. The same cake I'd made for every one of his birthdays since he was born. My chest felt tight, like someone was squeezing my heart with both hands. "Mama Rosa makes the best red velvet in Atlanta," one of the partners said, not knowing he was twisting the knife deeper. Because Darius didn't correct him. Didn't say, "Actually, that's my mother." Just smiled and nodded like I was hired help in his big Buckhead mansion. Before we continue, please comment below, as I'd love to hear your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel to help us hit that big 1,000 subscriber milestone. That morning had started like any other Saturday. I'd gotten up at 5, said my prayers, and started cooking. Darius had called the night before, sweet as honey. "Mama, can you make your famous red velvet for the dinner party? You know nobody can touch your recipe." I should have known something was different when he sent a car instead of picking me up himself. Should have noticed when he met me at the service entrance instead of the front door. But I was just happy to celebrate my baby's success. 35 years old, youngest black partner at Whitman & Associates, living in a house that looked like something out of a magazine. The dining room was full of important people. Judges, other lawyers, even a congressman's wife. And then there was me, in my good dress from JCPenney, being introduced as the help. I watched him work the room, my boy who used to beg me for bedtime stories, now too ashamed to claim me as his own. "Rosa, could you bring more champagne from the kitchen?" Darius said without looking at me, his voice carrying that edge I'd never heard him use with me before. "Of course, Mr. Edwards," I heard myself say, my voice steady even though my soul was crumbling. 2 could play this game. In that big kitchen, I leaned against the refrigerator and let myself feel it all. 22 years of single motherhood. His daddy walked out when Darius was 3, left us with nothing but bills and heartache. I'd cleaned office buildings at night, worked the register at Kroger during the day, did hair on weekends. Anything to keep food on the table and clothes on his back. I remembered the day he got into Emory, how we cried together in our little apartment, me promising I'd find a way to pay for it all. And I did. Every semester, every book, every late-night pizza during finals week. Even sold my mama's jewelry to cover his bar exam fees. "Where's that champagne?" A woman's voice floated in from the dining room, one of those partners' wives with diamonds bigger than grapes. I grabbed 2 bottles of the fancy stuff, the kind that cost more than my weekly grocery budget, and headed back. As I poured, I heard them talking about their vacation homes, their kids' private schools, their stock portfolios. And Darius, my Darius, fitting right in like he'd been born to it. "Your maid is quite good," the congressman's wife said to him. "Where did you find her?" "She's been with the family a long time," Darius answered smoothly. With the family, like I was inherited furniture. The rest of the evening blurred together. I served, I smiled, I cleaned, playing the role he'd cast me in. But with every passing minute, something inside me was changing. The hurt was hardening into something else. Something that had edges. Around 10 o'clock, the party was winding down. Darius handed me an envelope as I gathered my things. "For your trouble tonight, Rosa." I looked at that envelope, then at my son's face, searched for any sign of the boy who used to climb into my bed during thunderstorms. But all I saw was a stranger in an expensive suit. "Keep it," I said quietly, setting the envelope on the counter. "Consider it a birthday gift from your maid." Something flickered in his eyes then. Maybe guilt. Maybe surprise. But I didn't wait to find out. I walked out that service entrance with my head high, even though my heart was in pieces on his marble floor. The car he'd hired was still waiting, but I waved it away. Needed to walk. Needed the cold October air to clear my head. As I waited for the bus on Peachtree Street, I pulled out my phone and saw a text from my best friend Loretta. No, wait. Can't use Loretta. From my best friend Vanessa. How'd the birthday dinner go, honey? I stared at that screen for a long time, not knowing how to answer. How do you tell someone that your own child just erased you? That 35 years of love and sacrifice meant less to him than his reputation at some law firm? But as I sat on that empty bus, heading back to my apartment in East Point, something else was stirring. See, what Darius didn't know was that 3 months ago, I'd gotten a call from a lawyer. A real one, not like these folks playing dress-up at dinner parties. My Uncle Eugene had passed, left me his catering business and a little money. I'd been sitting on it, not sure what to do, thinking maybe I'd talk to Darius about it tonight. Well, he'd made his choice. Now it was time to make mine. When I got home, I went straight to my closet and pulled out the manila folder. Eugene's Catering, established 1962. All the licenses, the commercial kitchen in College Park, even a van, and a bank account with enough to get started. I thought about calling Darius, telling him how he'd hurt me. But what would be the point? He'd shown me who he was now, or maybe who he'd always been, and I'd just been too blind with mother's love to see it. Instead, I called Vanessa. Girl, you still got your daughter's number, the one who does marketing? Rosa, it's almost midnight. What's going on? I'm starting a business, I said, surprising myself with how sure I sounded. And I'm gonna need help. As I hung up, I looked at the pictures on my wall. Darius at graduation. Darius being sworn in at the bar. Darius. 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 My whole life had been about Darius. But tomorrow that was going to change. He wanted Rosa the maid? Fine. But he was about to meet Rosa the business owner. And something told me that before this was all over, my son was going to learn that some things matter more than marble counters and champagne. I just had no idea that 6 months later, I'd be standing in front of his entire law firm, holding a contract that would change everything, or that the woman serving champagne tonight would soon be signing their paychecks. But I'm getting ahead of myself. First, I had a funeral to attend, because the mother Darius had known died tonight in that dining room. And the woman born from her ashes? She wasn't taking anyone's disrespect, not even from her own son. 6 months. That's all it took to build an empire from heartbreak. I stood in my commercial kitchen at 4 a.m., flour dusting my apron, watching my team of 5 prep for the biggest order yet. The mayor's anniversary party. 400 guests. And guess whose law firm was handling the city contracts? Rosa, Channel 5 wants to interview you about the Women in Business feature, Vanessa's daughter Kimberly called out, waving her phone. They heard about you catering the NBA player's wedding last month. I nodded, still focused on the fondant roses I was crafting. Same roses from that dress I wore to Darius's party. Funny how life works. That night, I was the help. Now I had 3 news stations wanting to tell my story. Tell them after 2, we got work to do. Before we continue, quick question. What would you do in this situation? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. The transformation didn't happen overnight, though Lord knows it felt like it. That first morning after Darius's party, I woke up different. Angry, yes. Hurt, definitely. But mostly determined. I took Uncle Eugene's savings, all $43,000, and got to work. First thing I did was hire Vanessa's daughter Kimberly, fresh out of Georgia State with a marketing degree and nowhere to use it. Then I found Josephine, 62 years old, laid off from the Marriott after 30 years. Best pastry chef in the South, just needed someone to believe in her again. We started small. Church events, repasts, birthday parties in the neighborhood. But then something magical happened. That congressman's wife from Darius's party? She tracked me down. Turns out she'd been asking about that incredible red velvet cake, and someone let slip that the maid was actually the lawyer's mother. "Mrs. Edwards," she'd said when she called, her voice different now, respectful. "I owe you an apology, and I'd like to hire you for my charity gala." 1 gala turned into 5, 5 turned into 20. By month 3, Rosa's Southern Comfort Catering had a waiting list. We specialized in soul food with a gourmet twist, collard green spring rolls, sweet potato brulee, fried chicken and waffles with bourbon maple glaze. Food that told our story but dressed up fancy enough for Buckhead ballrooms. I hadn't spoken to Darius since that night. He'd called once, 2 weeks later, talking about misunderstandings and how I'd taken things wrong. I let him finish, then said, "Mr. Edwards, I believe you have the wrong number," and hung up. Blocked him after that. If he wanted to play strangers, we'd be strangers. But Atlanta's black elite is smaller than people think. Stories travel. His colleagues' wives started asking why Attorney Edwards never mentioned his mother ran the hottest catering company in the city. Why she wasn't at the Lynx fundraiser or the Boole Gala where everyone else's mothers held court. Vanessa kept me updated, bless her gossiping heart. "Girl, I heard from my cousin who works at his firm that Darius been looking stressed. Partners asking questions. You know, appearance is everything at those white shoe law firms." "Not my concern," I'd say, checking our books. 300,000 in revenue in 6 months. Not bad for a maid. The call that changed everything came on a Tuesday. I was taste testing our new shrimp and grits recipe when Kimberly rushed in. "Rosa, you're not going to believe this. Whitman and Associates wants us to cater their annual gala. The one at the Fox Theater. 800 guests, including the governor." I set down my spoon real slow. "That's so. There's more. They specifically requested you personally oversee it. Said their clients have been raving about our food. They want to meet Thursday to discuss." Whitman and Associates. Darius's firm. The same people he was so desperate to impress that he disowned his own mother. "Tell them yes." Kimberly raised an eyebrow. "You sure? I mean, considering—" "Oh, I'm sure." Thursday morning I dressed carefully. Not the Sunday dress with roses this time. A sharp burgundy suit I'd bought with my first big check. My grandmother's pearl necklace. Hair pressed and styled at the salon. I looked like success. Felt like it too. Walking into that law firm was like entering a tomb. All marble and mahogany, old white men staring down from portraits. The receptionist, a young brother named Jerome according to his nameplate, did a double take when I gave my name. "Mrs. Edwards? From Rosa's Southern Comfort?" "That's right." He leaned forward, whispering, "My mama loves y'all's peach cobbler. Says it's better than her own, but don't tell her I said that." I smiled, the first real smile I'd had all day. "Your secret's safe with me, baby." The conference room was on the 20th floor. City views for days. And sitting at that long table were 5 partners, 2 event planners, and my son. I watched his face go from confusion to recognition to something that might have been panic. "Gentlemen, may I present Mrs. Rosa Edwards?" The senior partner, Mr. Whitman himself, stood up. "The culinary genius behind Rosa's Southern Comfort Catering." I shook hands all around, professional as could be. When I got to Darius, I paused just a beat. "Counselor?" "Mrs. Edwards," he managed, his voice cracking slightly. "We've heard incredible things," Mr. Whitman continued, obvious to the tension. "Judge Morrison hasn't stopped talking about your food since his anniversary party. And when the mayor's wife recommends someone, we listen." We spent an hour discussing menus, logistics, budgets. I quoted them $90,000. They didn't blink. Throughout it all, Darius sat silent, his legal pad untouched. I could feel his eyes on me, but I kept my focus on business. "There's one more thing," Mr. Whitman said as we wrapped up. We'd like to formally recognize you at the gala. You know, supporting Black-owned businesses is important to us. Perhaps you could say a few words about your journey, building your company? I'd be honored. Darius's pen snapped in half. After the meeting, I waited for the elevator alone, but I knew he'd follow. Sure enough, footsteps behind me. Mama? I turned slowly. Oh, now I'm your mama? I thought I was the maid. Can we talk? Please? I'm listening. He looked smaller somehow, standing in that hallway with his expensive suit and broken pen. I messed up. That's all? You messed up? Like you spilled coffee or forgot my birthday? What do you want me to say? Nothing. The elevator dinged. There's nothing you can say. You showed me who you are, Darius. Who you really are when it matters. That's not fair. You don't understand the pressure I'm under here. The only Black partner, everyone watching, waiting for me to fail. And having a mother who worked honest jobs your whole life would make you fail? He didn't answer. You think I don't know about pressure? I stepped into the elevator but held the door. I raised you alone. No help, no child support, no fancy degrees. Just determination and grace. But that embarrasses you. Mama! No, you made your choice. Now I've made mine. See you at the gala, counselor. I let the door close on his face. That night I sat in my office, yes, I had an office now, and let myself cry for the first time since his birthday party. Not for what I'd lost, but for what I'd found. Purpose. Pride. A business that employed 12 people, including 2 other single mothers and a brother just out of prison getting a second chance. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. I almost deleted it, then saw the preview. Mrs. Rosa, this is Naomi, Darius's ex-fiancée. Now that was interesting. Naomi Caldwell, the prosecutor he'd dated for 3 years. Smart, beautiful, from a good family. They'd been engaged until 6 months ago when she suddenly called it off, right around the time of his birthday party. I heard you're catering the Whitman Gala. I think we should talk. There are things you should know about why we really broke up. I stared at that message for a long time, then typed back. Lunch tomorrow? My treat. What Naomi told me over fried catfish and collards the next day changed everything. The story my son had been hiding. The debts. The lies. The reason he was so desperate to fit in with those partners. The illegal things he'd done to keep up appearances. But that's not even the biggest shock. The real twist came when she slid a folder across the table. I've been building a case. Quietly. But I needed someone he trusts to get close enough to find the final piece of evidence. He doesn't trust me anymore. No, she said softly. But he needs you. And that's even more powerful. I looked at those documents. My son, my baby boy, had gotten himself in deeper than I could have imagined. And now I had a choice. Let him fall alone, or use my position to save him from himself. Why are you telling me this? Naomi's eyes were sad. Because despite everything, I know you love him. And he's going to need that love when this all comes crashing down. Which it will. With or without our help. The gala was in 3 days. 800 of Atlanta's most powerful people. A speech where I could tell my story. And now, apparently, a chance to either destroy my son or save him. I picked up that folder. Tell me everything. As Naomi talked, I realized something. That boy who introduced me as the maid? He wasn't just ashamed of where he came from. He was drowning, and he'd been too proud to ask his mama for help. Well, he was about to learn that Rosa Edwards didn't raise no fool. Even if that fool was her own son, the gala was going to be more than anyone bargained for, including me. The Fox Theater glowed like a jewel on Peachtree Street. 3 days had passed since my lunch with Naomi, and I'd spent every one of them reading that folder, learning things about my son that made my stomach turn. Embezzlement. Not a lot, but enough. Taking money from client trust accounts to fund his lifestyle. The house in Buckhead, the car, the fancy suits. All borrowed against funds that weren't his. "Mama Rosa, you look beautiful," Josephine said as she adjusted my dress. Not burgundy this time, royal blue, like my grandmother used to wear to church on Easter Sunday. A queen's color. "We ready?" Kitchen set up, staffs in position. This is it. This was it indeed. 800 guests, the biggest night of my business career, and possibly the worst night of my son's life, depending on what I decided to do. I hadn't told Naomi my plan yet, hadn't told anyone. Because the truth was, until I walked into that theater, I didn't know myself what I was going to do. The mama in me wanted to protect Darius, warn him, help him fix it before it was too late. But the woman he'd called the Maid? She wanted justice. The ballroom was magnificent. Ice sculptures, crystal chandeliers, tables draped in gold. My food stations were placed throughout, each one a work of art. Shrimp and grits bar, carved prime rib. My famous red velvet cake as the centerpiece, 8 tiers tall. Guests started arriving at 7. I watched from the kitchen, seeing Darius work the room in his tuxedo, shaking hands, laughing at jokes, playing the part. Every so often, his eyes would drift to the kitchen, searching. But I stayed back, supervising, making sure everything was perfect. Mr. Whitman found me around 8. "Mrs. Edwards, this food is extraordinary. Our guests are raving. You ready for your speech?" "Yes, sir." "Just need a few minutes to prepare." What he didn't know was that my preparation had nothing to do with the speech. I'd found Naomi in the crowd, elegant in a silver gown. She'd come as someone's +1, using her connections. Our eyes met across the room. She touched her purse. The evidence was in there. All she needed was my signal, and she'd hand it to the senior partner. Darius's career would be over before dessert was served. I thought about that little boy who used to help me fold laundry in our tiny apartment. How he'd iron his own school clothes because he didn't want the other kids to tease him about wrinkles. How hard he'd worked to get out of poverty. Maybe too hard. Maybe so hard he forgot where he came from. Forgot that integrity mattered more than marble countertops. At 8:30, Mr. Whitman took the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, before we begin our program, I'd like to introduce someone very special, the creative force behind tonight's incredible cuisine. Mrs. Rosa Edwards of Rosa's Southern Comfort Catering has a story that embodies the American dream. Rosa, please join me." I walked out to applause, saw Darius standing near the back, his face unreadable, saw Naomi, waiting, saw all these powerful people who'd never given folks like me a second thought until they wanted something we had. "Thank you, Mr. Whitman," I began, my voice steady. 6 months ago, I was in a room much like this one, serving food just like tonight. But nobody knew my name. Nobody cared about my story. I was just the help. The room got quiet. That night, someone I loved very much was ashamed of me. Ashamed of my humble work, my simple clothes, my life of service. And I left that party with my heart broken. But I also left with a choice. I could let that shame define me, or I could transform it into something beautiful. I saw Darius's head drop. See, what that person didn't know was that I'd just inherited my uncle's catering business. I'd been sitting on it, unsure if I could do it, but that night of humiliation became my night of liberation. I decided to bet on myself the way I'd spent decades betting on others. The applause started small, then grew. I held up my hand. But here's the thing about success. It doesn't heal every wound. It doesn't answer every question. Because tonight, I'm standing here with a decision to make. I looked directly at Darius now. I have information that could destroy someone who hurt me deeply. And part of me wants to use it, wants them to feel the pain I felt. Naomi's hand moved to her purse. Darius's face had gone pale. My grandmother used to say, "Baby, you can be right or you can be righteous, but sometimes you can't be both." I spent 3 days trying to figure out which one I wanted to be. The room was silent now. Mr. Whitman looked confused. "Darius Edwards," I said, my voice carrying across the ballroom. "Would you come up here, please?" I watched my son walk through that crowd like he was walking to the electric chair. When he reached the stage, I saw it all in his eyes. Fear, shame, regret. The same eyes that used to look at me like I hung the moon. "This is my son," I told the room. "The youngest black partner at Whitman & Associates. Brilliant lawyer. Top of his class at Emory. And at his birthday party 6 months ago, he told everyone I was his maid." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Mr. Whitman's face registered shock. "Mama, please," Darius whispered. "Hush, I'm talking." I turned back to the audience. He was ashamed of me, of the woman who raised him alone, who worked 3 jobs, who sold her mama's jewelry to pay for his education. And you know what? That shame almost destroyed both of us. It destroyed him because he lost himself trying to be something he wasn't. It almost destroyed me because I'd spent my whole life making his success my purpose. I pulled an envelope from my dress pocket. Not the one with Naomi's evidence, a different one. "This morning, I got a call from the Georgia Bar Association. Someone filed a complaint about potential ethics violations, client trust account irregularities." I looked at Darius. "You want to tell them—" "Or should I?" His voice cracked. "I took money. Not a lot, but I took it. To pay for things I couldn't afford. To look the part." The room erupted, partners moving toward us. Mr. Whitman's face red with fury. But I held up my hand again. "Hold on now. See, what's interesting is that same complaint included evidence of restitution. Every penny paid back with interest. Documentation of counseling for gambling debt. And a character reference from prosecutor Naomi Caldwell." Naomi stood up, nodding. "My son made terrible choices," I continued. "But 3 months ago, he came to me. Not to the mama he'd introduced as the maid, but to a woman whose number he'd had to get from my pastor because he'd blocked his own mother. He came broken, desperate, and honest. And you know what I did?" I turned to Darius. Tears streaming down both our faces now. "I helped him. Not because he deserved it, but because that's what love does. Real love. Not the conditional kind that depends on success or status. The kind that says, 'I see you at your worst, and I'm still here.'" "I'm so sorry, Mama," Darius sobbed. "I'm so sorry." "I know, baby. I know." Mr. Whitman stepped forward. "Mrs. Edwards, are you saying this has been resolved?" "I'm saying my son broke the law and he's willing to face consequences. He's already spoken with the Bar Association. He's in counseling. He's sold that big house he couldn't afford and moved into an apartment in College Park, near me." I smiled. "And every Saturday he comes to work at my catering company, for free, learning what honest work looks like." I pulled out a second envelope. "This is his resignation from your firm, effective immediately. He knows he can't stay here, but he wanted to make it right first." Darius handed the letter to Mr. Whitman with shaking hands. "However," I continued, "I'm asking you not to press criminal charges, not because he's my son, though he is, but because sometimes mercy teaches better than punishment. Let the Bar Association handle their investigation. Let him rebuild his life the right way, and let this be a lesson to everyone in this room." I looked out at 800 faces. Success without integrity is just a fancy prison. Money without character is just expensive shame. My son learned that the hard way, but he's learning. And as long as I'm breathing, I'll be here to make sure he becomes the man I raised him to be. Not the man he pretended to be. The applause started slow, then built like a wave. Through my tears, I saw partners conferring, some angry, some thoughtful. Mr. Whitman looking at Darius with something like respect mixed with disappointment. "Your son is fortunate to have you," Mr. Whitman said finally. "We'll discuss this with the full partnership." "But Mrs. Edwards, your grace tonight has taught us more than any keynote speaker could have." As the crowd dispersed into smaller conversations, Darius and I stood alone on that stage. "Why?" he asked. "After what I did to you, why would you save me?" "Baby, I didn't save you. You saved yourself when you finally got honest. I just reminded you that you don't have to do it alone." I touched his face. "That's what mothers do. We show you who you are when you forget." "I don't deserve you." "Probably not. But love ain't about deserving. It's about choosing, every day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." 3 months later, on a Sunday morning, I stood in my church watching Darius give his testimony, talking about pride, fall, and redemption. The Bar Association had suspended his license for 2 years but allowed him to keep it. He was working as a paralegal now, making a quarter of his old salary. And every weekend, he was in my kitchen, learning the family recipes, helping serve at events. "My mama taught me that there's no shame in honest work," he told the congregation, "only in dishonest living. I lost sight of that. But God and my mama didn't give up on me." After service, we went to my place for Sunday dinner. Just the two of us. Like old times. Fried chicken, mac and cheese, collards, cornbread. The food of our people, our heritage, our love. "Mama, I've been thinking," Darius said, helping me wash dishes. "When I get my license back, I want to do pro bono work. Help people who can't afford lawyers. People like we used to be." "That sounds right. And I want to invest in your business. Not because you need it, but because I want to be part of something real. Something that matters." I handed him a dish to dry. "You already are part of it, baby. You always were. That's what you forgot." My phone buzzed. Another catering inquiry. The mayor's office this time. Rosa's Southern Comfort had become one of the most sought-after caterers in Atlanta. Not because of that dramatic night at the Fox Theater, though that didn't hurt, but because our food told a story. A story of resilience, love, and second chances. "You know what's funny?" I said, looking at my son. "That night you called me the maid. You were trying to erase your past. But our past is what makes us rich. Not money rich, soul rich." "I know that now. Took you long enough." We both laughed then, real laughter that came from healing. Because that's the thing about family. We can hurt each other deeper than anyone else. But we can also heal each other in ways nobody else can touch. 6 months after the gala, I got a letter from Mr. Whitman. Whitman and Associates wanted to create a scholarship fund for first-generation college students pursuing law. They wanted to name it after me, the Rosa Edwards Scholarship for Excellence and Integrity. "What do you think?" I asked Darius. "I think it's perfect. I think you turned the worst moment of my life into something beautiful. That's what you do, Mama. You take broken things and make them whole." "No, baby. God does that. I just make sure to show up and do the work." And that's exactly what I kept doing. Building my business, loving my son, serving my community. That royal blue dress? I donated it to a nonprofit helping women re-enter the workforce. Let someone else feel like a queen in it. Because I learned something important through all of this. My worth wasn't in my son's success or my business growth, or standing ovations at fancy galas. My worth was in knowing who I was. Rosa Edwards, daughter of the South, raised by strong women who taught me that dignity can't be given or taken away. It just is. And whether I was introducing myself as a maid, a caterer, or just somebody's mama, that truth remained. I was enough. I always had been. I just needed my son to break my heart so I could remember. Funny how God works like that. That's all for today's story. If this touched your heart, please subscribe and share your own experiences below. We're all in this together.